Well, good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames. My name's Amy Slagle and I serve on the Sunday Services Committee. We are so glad that you've chosen to join us here on the first of our 4 July services meeting in Zoom. Zoom services are a little different. If you haven't been attending services this way for some time, let me remind you that you can adjust what you see on the screen by navigating the view box in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window. Please know at the end of the service today, you're welcome to remain and visit with others who are attending today. At that time, you can unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone in the lower left corner of your screen. And also, if you run your cursor across the bottom of the screen, you'll see options such as chat, where you can open a chat window. Sometimes we post announcements and other information in the chat window during the service. That's also another way that you can communicate with people after the service today. You can also click on to be able to see a transcript or closed captioning throughout the service there at the lower part of your Zoom screen. By way of announcements this morning, I do want to share that longtime member Irv Klaus passed away early Saturday morning. Irv was so generous in sharing his expertise and passion for ecology with this community, and his impact really can't be overstated. Plans are just now getting underway for his memorial service, which will be in a few weeks. Please keep an eye out for details in your inbox. And finally, for the month of July, our offertory beneficiary is UUs for Social Justice. The UUSJ works to advance equitable national policies and actions aligned with UU values through engagement, education, and advocacy. They are responsible for the Right Here, Right Now campaign that we periodically see here at the fellowship that brings our letters directly to legislators in Washington. We will post a link in the Zoom chat during today's service to take you to the UUFA website where you can safely contribute to the UUSJ as our offertory recipient through our Square site. That same UUFA page will allow you to make pledge payments, donate to our partner church, and donate to our operating fund to support programs here in the fellowship that make this a community of inspiration, transformation, and belonging. And if you are just visiting with us for the first time or an early visit today, please know your presence here is gift enough. I so appreciate the planners for today's service, and I will turn it over to them now. Thank you again for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Amy. This is Sam Wormley. Matt and I are excited to facilitate an admittedly unorthodox service for you today. In March, Matt and I teamed up to offer a service preparing the fellowship for likely changes to the UU at General Assembly. And in a couple of weeks ago, delegates at General Assembly, including our own, made some historic choices. Today, our aim is to follow up on this service, telling you about those changes that went into effect as a result of GA. Because our goal here is largely educational, Matt's 2 meditations, that's alternatives to sermons, will be longer than is customarily part of a Sunday service, but we think your patience and attention will be well rewarded. So get comfortable, settle in, maybe get out a piece of paper and pencil for notes. We think this is going to be a provocative service. I'm going to start the service by doing Let Us Be Drawn In. In the world of the driven, let us be drawn in. Let your love be a given, let us be drawn in. To imagine, to dream, to create, to redeem, for the sake of the living, let us be drawn in. Now Matt will offer the chalice lighting.
Good morning, everybody. The chalice lighting for today actually comes from GA, and it is a poem by Aurora Levins Morales called Summons. Last night I dreamed 10,000 grandmothers from the 1,200 corners of the earth walked out into the gap, one breath deep, between the bullet and the flesh, between the bomb and the family. They told me we cannot wait for governments. There are no peacekeepers boarding planes. There are no leaders who dare to say, every life is precious, so it will have to be us. They said we will cup our hands around each heart. We will sing the earth's song, the song of water, a song so beautiful that vengeance will turn to weeping. The mourners will embrace and grief replace every impulse toward harm. 10,000 is not enough, they said. So we have sent this dream like a flock of doves into the sleep of the world. Wake up, put on your shoes. You who are reading this, I am bringing bandages and a bag of scented guavas from my trees. I think I remember the tune, Meet Me at the Corner. Let's go.
Our opening hymn is Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Rose hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Jamie will now give us our reading, Spirit of Life and of Love.
Thanks, Sam. And as Matt pointed out, these opening words were also read at the opening of General Assembly this year. Spirit of Life and Love by Sue Ayer. Spirit of life and love. We have gathered here in search of answers to hard questions. We have come in search of understanding, in search of community. We have come in search of hope and healing. Let this be a place not only of searching, but of discovery. Let this be a place not only of learning, but of wisdom. Let this be a place not only of meeting, but of connection. And let this be a place where healing fosters giving and hope fosters service. This is our prayer, that we may create here a circle of love, ever expanding, ever growing, as we seek to know you, our source of being. May it be so.
Thank you, Jamie. The first meditation by Matt Ferris.
Good morning, beloved community. I'm speaking to you today with a buoyant spirit, with gratitude for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames and the broader UU community. It also appears to you that I'm coming from an undisclosed location in a closet. Couldn't be helped, I'm sorry. I come to you today partly as a messenger and partly as a sort of self-appointed non-resident fellowship philosopher. As a messenger, I'd like to follow up on my meditations from our Sunday service on March 17th. At that time, I explained some proposed changes to our religious movement to be determined at this summer's General Assembly. Well, GA has come and gone, and it was eventful. Thank you for granting me the privilege to serve as one of our delegates. As I weighed the issues and business items one by one, you felt very present to me. I voted in good faith as a delegate with a specific mandate from the fellowship. And for all the delegates, for the entire beloved community, the voting was in fact historic. In the years to come, we will look back on the summer of 2024 as a profound transformation of our religious movement. So, as messenger, I'd like to tell you about some of the results of the voting at General Assembly. I'll focus on the same issues I discussed with you at our March 17th Sunday service, the Article 2 section of the Unitarian Universalist Association's bylaws. If you missed that online service, I encourage you to check it out on YouTube. It might still help you to understand the vital changes to our religious movement that have now been formally affirmed and inaugurated. But in short, what you need to know is this: love JetPig and be broadly inspired by wisdom. Love JetPig and be broadly inspired by wisdom. I'll get to what that means through two separate meditations. First, I'll unpack what has happened to the UUA's stated purposes, as well as the 7 principles. Second, I'll unpack what's happened to the 6 sources and discuss how the revisions emphasize the role of covenant in our religion. As I said, with no authority or mandate whatsoever, I have appointed myself as a non-resident fellowship philosopher. In that remarkably unmagisterial, unsanctioned, and eminently unofficial role, I will share with you some of my thoughts on what the new language of the UUA's bylaws mean for us. All right, so here it is. A total of 80.2% of delegates at GA voted to adopt the proposed revision to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. The required threshold for adoption of the new language was 2/3, or 66.7%. The revision passed. The upshot of the change is that the section of the UUA's bylaws that contained the 7 principles and 6 sources has been replaced. Don't freak out. That section is now a part of our historical canon, an essential dimension of who we have been, a vital element of our UU beloved community as an ongoing living tradition. For you, the 7 principles and 6 sources may remain fundamental to what guides you in life. For you, they may remain fundamental to your understanding of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. They sure will for me. A few years ago, I came to the conclusion that I am and have been a Unitarian Universalist, largely because of the 6 sources. Having said that, the 7 principles and 6 sources are no longer a part of the UUA bylaws as part of Section C-2.1, Principles. The 8th principle, which our congregation wisely adopted, has been integrated quite powerfully into the newly adopted language, which I'll get into in a minute. Because of the new language, the 8th principle will no longer need to be adopted by the broader UU community to take its rightful place with the other 7 principles. To be transparent, in addition to the 7 principles and 6 sources language, there are a variety of other changes that the Article 2 revisions have initiated. For instance, in section C-2.1, Purposes, the Unitarian Universalists Association's primary purposes have been meaningfully overhauled. The stated purposes of the UUA now include, among other things, quote, to heal historic injustices, to foster lifelong faith formation and spiritual development, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world, end quote. As I said, our 8th principle is alive and well in the new language of Article 2 here and elsewhere. Moreover, section C-2.1 now concludes with a statement as demanding as it is beautiful. Quote, the Unitarian Universalist Association will actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love, end quote. I would have liked to see in all caps with an exclamation point the word BLAM after that purpose statement. We can't get everything we want in these revisions, right? Anyway, other details of the new language are important, but I'd like to shift our focus to what has replaced the 7 principles language. Section C-2.2, Values and Covenant, is the section of the new UUA bylaws where much of the action is. Indeed, the Values and Covenant title is apt. The new language gives prominence to 7 values essential to the beloved community and what we covenant to do to manifest those values. There are 3 basic working parts to this new Values and Covenant section. We, 1, covenant, 2, 7 values, and because we covenant to those values, we must, 3, act in particular ways in order to remain in covenanted alignment with our shared values. In other words, excuse me, the new language prioritizes covenanting to actualizing 7 values, covenanting to actualizing 7 values. If you're thinking that you're picking up on a lot of verb language, action, doing, you're paying attention. The revision language is animated. It both instantiates and substantiates the living part of our living tradition. I'll say more about this Trinitarian system. I'm just kidding. I'll say more about this threefold emphasis on covenant, value, and action in a moment. And now, drum roll please. The beginning of the new Values and Covenant section reads as follows, and I quote, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant, congregation to congregation and through our association, to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love, end quote. Love is professed as our foundation, our center. There's even a metaphysical kick to this passage. Love is our relational power. It is our raison d'etre, our reason for being. It is our sine qua non, our without which nothing. It is, in fact, an explicit spiritual discipline. You get the point. Let it be known that, first and foremost, Unitarian Universalism is a religion of love. Quoting again from the New Values and Covenant section, quote, building on the foundation of love and inseparable from one another, our shared values are justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. Justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. You may be thinking, well, gosh golly, how am I going to remember all that? It's fun. It's easy. Love, JetPig. Love, JetPig. Love, justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. The writers of the Values and Covenant section apparently weren't fully enlightened by the mnemonic Love, JetPig. So in Article 2, the shared values are listed in a non-JetPig order. To err is human, right? The shared values are articulated one at a time in a pithy and formulaic fashion. Each value is named, briefly articulated, and then there is a 1 or 2 sentence covenant statement illuminating how to actualize the value through action. For example, the P of Love, JetPig, pluralism. I'm quoting here, pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect, end quote. So the value is named, pluralism. It is briefly articulated. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings in culture, experience, and theology. And then the covenant statement illuminates how to actualize pluralism through action. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Another of our shared values is justice, the J of Love, JetPig. Quote, justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large, end quote. Again, there are 3 parts to each values articulation in the Values and Covenant section of Article 2. The value is named, justice. It is briefly articulated. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. And then the covenant statement illuminates how to actualize justice through action. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. Remember our 8th principle? Key phrasing from the 8th principle, word for word, appears here. In addition, a feature that distinguishes the 8th principle from the other 7 is now infused throughout the 7 shared values. To wit, its powerful manifestation language, doing the principle. But wait, there's more. That's right. The 7 shared values reflect other essential qualities of the 8 principles, often word for word. In point of fact, the Article 2 Study Commission, the group that authored the vast majority of the new bylaws language, explicitly stated that one of its main aims was to distill the essence of all 8 principles and restate that essence as our shared fundamental values. Let's do one more value to illustrate the point. The E of love, JetPig. I'm quoting, equity. We declared that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Hey, can I get a you, may it be so for the first principle? Yep, there it is. Another aim of the Article 2 Study Commission was to use poetic and memorable language. Essentially, the equity value is the first principle, articulated more beautifully and with a covenant statement articulating what it means to do equity. I want you to embrace what I say next. Let it wash over you. Let it sink into your bones. Make it a part of you. The values are verbs. A true value is an actual valuing. What we're charged to manifest, to embody, and to covenant to is 7 values, not 7 ideals. If I say that I value equity, but I actually value exclusivity, my choices and actions will manifest exclusivity, not equity. In that case, equity may be an ideal, what I want to believe that I value, and I may say that I value equity. But if I actualize exclusivity, I am not valuing equity. The values are aspirational, yes, and we will be human and imperfect as we pursue lives grounded in those values. I can tell you with certainty that not a single delegate at GA voted on perfection as a shared UU value. The P in Love JetPig stands for pluralism, not perfection. We do our valuing through our actions, choices, commitments, and ways of living on a human scale. Through the 7 shared values, inseparable from one another and building on the foundation of love, we will actualize in our lives what's best in the 8 principles the best we can. And we covenant to those values individually and collectively, holding one another accountable to valuing the values on a human scale. If our actions, choices, commitments, and ways of living do not sufficiently align with our covenants, that is not a sign of failure. Rather, we will be called to do better with generosity, with help from our beloved community. And there is the G of Love JetPig. Quoting, generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. End quote. Remember, the 7 values are shared. We covenant to be connected to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality, with generosity, building on the foundation of love. We will pursue and practice our shared values together as beloved community.
Our centering music will be Find a Stillness.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Amy will now share a reading, A Vision by Wendell Berry.
If we still have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow growing trees on a ruined place, renewing, enriching it. If we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, the lives our lives prepare will live there. Their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the windows. The river will run clear as we will never know it, and over it, bird song like a canopy. On the levels of the hills will be green meadows, stock bells in noon shade. On the steeps where greed and ignorance cut down the old forest, an old forest will stand, its rich leaf fall drifting on its roots. The veins of forgotten springs will have opened. Families will be singing in the fields. In their voices, they will hear a music risen out of the ground. They will take nothing from the ground, they will not return, whatever the grief at parting. Memory, native to this valley, will spread over it like a grove, and memory will grow into legend, and legend into song, song into sacrament. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its birds, will be health and wisdom and indwelling light. This is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility.
Matt's second presentation, his second meditation.
Blessed be, beloveds. I realize that these meditations today are substantially longer than a typical single sermon for a Sunday service. My hope and my intention is that your time and attention today will be well rewarded. A lot has changed for our beloved community, and I want you to feel well educated about the revitalization happening today in our religious movement. In this second meditation, I'd like to unpack and interpret the significance of the newly inaugurated Inspirations section of the UUA bylaws, C-2.3. I will also explain how the revisions refocus us on what's distinctive about the wisdom of a covenantal Unitarian Universalist way of life. With this new language, an invaluable dimension of our living tradition's distinctiveness is both accentuated and advanced. Here's what it says in a nutshell. Unitarian Universalism is a religious movement that treasures wisdom wherever it may be found, and we practice wisdom in myriad ways. As I stated earlier, in the UUA bylaws, the 6 sources have been replaced, along with the 7 principles. I assure you that the 6 sources have not, however, been eliminated from our living tradition. As with the 7 principles, and for that matter, the profound works of James Luther Adams, William Ellery Channing, Margaret Fuller, and Rebecca Ann Parker, the 6 sources now have pride of place as crucial sources of wisdom from which we may draw. I want to be crystal clear here. The very language that has replaced the 6 sources in the UUA bylaws, that very language, encourages us to affirm the 7 principles and 6 sources as inspirational treasures. Here's what the inspirations section professes in its entirety. Quote, direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and are currently practiced. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enshrines our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. End quote. Another blam would be appropriate here, or a tongue-in-cheek Ace Ventura pet detective, well, alrighty then. Candidly, it's difficult for me to be objective about this new inspirations language. I love it. It affirms the broadest possible range of our human experience and equipment for truth-seeking, meaning-making, and describing the world. In other words, it affirms the broadest possible range of our human experience for pursuing and practicing wisdom, living well. It calls us all to be philosophers, philosophers, lovers of wisdom, or, to give a nod to James Luther Adams, it calls us all, every last one of us, to be priests and prophets of wisdom. Like good old Uncle Walt Whitman, it prods us to sound our UU barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. Be broadly inspired by wisdom. I want to do that again. UU yawp with me. Be broadly inspired by wisdom. This inspirations declaration affirms the vast diversity of ways of knowing. It testifies that truth and knowledge present themselves in various forms. Therefore, we Unitarian Universalists affirm various ways of apprehending, perceiving, or getting at that truth and knowledge. Sacred understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values? Check. Secular understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values? Check. Scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values? Check. I want to read the inspiration section again. This time, ask yourself, what part of this statement inspires me? What is wise about this inspirations declaration? Quote, direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and are currently practiced. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enshrines our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom." End quote. What part of this statement inspires me? What is wise about this inspirations declaration? I would love for us all to have a congregation-wide discussion about these questions. Maybe someday we can do that. For me, one of the things that's wise about this statement is that it doesn't limit the nature of transcending mystery. Our most gifted scientists, those among us who grasp preternaturally the way things work, from the vast forces of the universe to the minute patterns of energy that function as the fabric of reality and everything in between, those among us who really, really get it, acknowledge that they really, really don't get it. The mysteries of reality transcend our knowledge, and yet we live in wonder with a drive to understand. Okay, this inspirations declaration affirms all that. Quote, "Direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration." End quote. So true, right? What else? What else is wise about our new inspirations language? How about the fact that it doesn't privilege any particular religious tradition or wisdom community, sacred, secular, or otherwise? Another way to put it, and in an appropriately self-referential way, the inspirations language instantiates our value of pluralism, the P of love, JetPig. Quote, "Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect." End quote. I have a little problem with the theology word there. I would prefer that we use philosophy. It's more inclusive. But while I remain a huge fan of the six sources, they're rightly criticized for being unnecessarily limited, for naming privileged names. Special shout outs go to, quote, Jewish and Christian teachings, humanist teachings, and spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, end quote. Not only that, but even the privileged teachings are unnecessarily limited in what wisdom they may have for us. Quote, "Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against the idolatries of the mind and spirit. Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature." End quote. That's what the six sources says. It's not that the six sources language is wrong. The language is simply not inspired enough by the stunning diversity of wisdom available through these named and privileged traditions. The spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions that I have been blessed to experience teach wisdom far in excess of the celebration of the sacred circle of life or living in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Similarly, Jewish and Christian teachings offer so much more than calling us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Our Unitarian and Universalist forebears celebrated so much more comprehensively the treasure of Jewish and Christian wisdom, different kinds of Jewish and Christian wisdom, than responding to God's love or loving our neighbors as ourselves. In fact, we today affirm the value of these named and privileged traditions so much more broadly and inclusively than the six sources list suggests. Our new inspirations language wisely professes that Unitarian Universalism is a religious movement that treasures wisdom wherever it may be found, and we practice wisdom in myriad ways. Indeed, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. I could go on and on about the inspirations section of the revised UUA bylaws, but now I'd like to make a brief comparative point about the relationship between our 7 shared values and inspirations. Whereas the inspirations language is expansive, be broadly inspired by wisdom, the 7 values are more specific, limited. I think that the Article 2 Study Commission got those proportions right. The inspiration language needs to be vast because the ways for living well are vast. On the other hand, we UUs have a set of specific core shared values, building on the foundation of love and inseparable from one another. Our 7 shared values necessarily differentiate from other competing values. Beloveds, we are not an anything goes religious movement. Remember Gordon Gekko from the 1987 landmark film Wall Street? Here's a statement from Gordon Gekko, his values. Quote, "I am not a destroyer of companies. I am a liberator of them. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms, greed for life, money, love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind. And greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar Paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much." End quote. Our G value is generosity, my friends. Gordon Gekko is no Unitarian Universalist, and greed will not make America great again. There, I said it. Generosity, along with equity, justice, interdependence, and let's say love. These are values contrary to greed. A plucky seminarian could even be inspired to offer a whole meditation on how each of our 7 shared values provides an alternative value system to greed, for lack of a better word, is good. My point is that our 7 shared values are meant to guide us in our actions, choices, commitments, and ways of living. We could navigate our lives by and value other aspirations. Nevertheless, or even because of that fact, we covenant to and affirm these 7 shared wise values. Greed isn't among them. In the future, our beloved community may revise our values statement to include others, or even eliminate some of the ones we have now. At GA this summer, delegates considered peace and reason as values that could have been included on our new list of shared values. This time around, those proposed values were not affirmed as written. There is a protocol for revising and amending our list of fundamental shared UU values. And when we discern as a beloved community that our valuing has changed, the list of values will undoubtedly change in a democratic process. One way or another, it is absolutely necessary for us to know what our core values are, what is good and what is not good, and ultimately what we accept and what we reject. I'm no fan of binaries. I even personally devoted my adult life, really, to deconstructing problematic binaries. So I use this accept reject binary with trepidation. But beloveds, we are not an anything goes religious movement. As you use, we side with love. Love is a shared fundamental value. So when we encounter hate or greed, our love opposes that hate or greed. In covenant, we respond to hate and greed with love, with the wise use of the power that we have to create change and actualize beneficent transformation. There's another dimension of our evolving beloved community that I'd like to highlight. A distinct feature of our religious movement, of the history of Unitarian Universalism, is covenant. It is appropriate for us to affirm that love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. If love is the power that holds us together, then covenant is the agreement we make to align with that power. Covenant is the agreement we make to align with the 7 shared values. Covenant is the agreement we make to respond with devotion and commitment when we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. The introduction of the new values and covenant section of the UUA bylaws promotes covenant as an indispensable element of our religious movement. As a reminder, it says, quote, "As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love." End quote. To be clear, our ministries refers to each and every one of us in the beloved community. We covenant, we make a pact, we contract with one another to support and assist one another in our ministries. The last line of the introduction could have been a whole lot better with the addition of 2 words that are implied, but should have been made completely explicit. My version would read, "Through covenant, we are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love." End quote. We are accountable to one another because love is our most fundamental value. Yes. But it is through covenant that we keep saying yes to love, keep saying yes to one another. It's because we are in a covenantal relationship that we are accountable to one another. We are accountable to one another because we value interdependence. This is the I value of love, JetPig. Quote, "Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships." End quote. As I noted earlier, each of the 7 values has a covenant statement as part of its articulation. The assertion, the profession, the promise we covenant to is one of the 3 main parts of each of our shared values. We agree to gather together in interdependence to live well. We will hold ourselves and one another accountable to walk the talk of Unitarian Universalism. Ours is not a creedal religion with creedal tests. It is a covenantal religion. And the new Article 2 language reinforces that fact over and over again. Not creedal, covenantal. Now for a public service announcement. If you're interested in checking out some online discussion of the entire platform of business items and proposals from GA, there's a website for that. To learn more, go to discuss.uua.org. Once again, that website is discuss.uua.org. What you'll find there is the tracks and traces of our UU democratic process in action. Side effects may include excessive blathering, mild to severe irritation, uncontrollable outbursts of yes, repeated thoughts of, well, what about, and sensitivity to extreme manifestations of love. We now return to the conclusion of today's regularly scheduled programming. Kindred spirits, we are indeed in a time of clarifying and celebrating the wisdom of Unitarian Universalism. Called to be the best version of Unitarian Universalism for today, we are in a time of transformation. This is the T value of Love Jetpig. Quote, transformation, we adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. Never complete and never perfect, end quote. The new UUA bylaws are catalysts for that transformation, as well as a blueprint for what kind of change calls us into renewed covenant with one another, into healthy relationships and wise ways of living, building on the foundation of love. Our collective purpose is clear. The Unitarian Universalist Association will actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. So mote it be.
Thank you, Matt. Our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze,
final words and benediction are from Matt Ferris.
Well, thank you, everybody. I know that that was a lot, and I maybe it was self-indulgent, but I really felt like I needed to get it out there so that you all would have a basis, a firm basis for understanding these really important changes to Unitarian Universalism. And with all of that in mind, our benediction is the dedication of merit, which is Buddhist practice that was practiced in a pagan community that I was a part of. And this is how that benediction, that dedication goes. May the benefit of this act and all acts be dedicated unto the complete liberation and the supreme enlightenment of all beings everywhere, pervading space and time. So mote it be. May the benefits of practice, ours and others, come to fruition, ultimately and immediately, and we remain in the state of presence. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you afterwards at coffee hour if you want to stick around.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Everybody can unmute and talk.
Thank you, everybody.